everybody, welcome to today's Moving Out of Academia. Now, this is an event where we highlight the many different industries and sectors our alumni go to after their time at CERN. And at each event, we focus on a specific sector, and today's is aerospace and aviation. Now, by inviting CERN alumni who've already experienced the transition from CERN, they can share pragmatic, candid, and practical information with you and maybe help demystify such transitions. For those that don't know me, my name's Rachel, and I'm joined by my fantastic team, Elena and Simona. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce you to a great friend of the alumni network, Gun Khatri. He's an applied physicist at CERN. He's from India, and he's working at CERN, as I said, as an applied physicist in the beam instrumentation a group in SY department. So after his bachelor's in India in 2008, he went for an Erasmus Master's Scholarship in Belgium, France, and Sweden. He did his PhD in experimental nuclear physics in Poland, Germany, and the Netherlands. And in 2016, Gunn came to CERN as a user. He was a postdoc at Harvard University, and then subsequently he became CERN Fellow and now staff. So Gunn, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. This is, it's incredible opportunity and networking even for myself as well. Thank you for this beautiful introduction. I will not take a lot of time because all our great speakers, their bio, they will speak themselves. So I'll just briefly start with our first, speaker without any further delay. So Frida, Frida is a mechanical engineer at Swiss 212, and she was at CERN as a fellow for RF mechanical part. So Frida, the floor is yours.
So I'm very happy to be here to talk to you today. I will talk about my travel from CERN and into the space domain. So my name is Frida Eriksson. I'm from Sweden, and I have a degree in mechanical engineering, where I was in Linköping, and I finished at 2016. And now I'm currently based in Switzerland, in the Lausanne area. So my time at CERN, I was there from 2016 to 2019 on a fellowship program, and I was in the RF department, as mentioned. My main project was called Crab Cavity, and I have the feeling, I don't know about you that are at CERN right now, but I have the feeling I learned so much at my time there. Both technical and soft skills. So for the technical part, I learned about RF. I didn't know anything about RF from before. I learned about clean room assembly, high tolerancing, vacuum detection, vacuum assembly. I was in the tunnel doing assembly sequence. So it was a very intense 3 years for me. But I also learned a lot of soft skills. So for example, to push my own project forward, to take responsibility, and to be proactive and manage my projects. So I think these soft skills is something that I tend to forget about my time at CERN, and that I think have been very useful for my future career afterwards. So not only the technical aspects, but also the soft skills that you acquire at such a nice facility as CERN is. So when after these three years, my time was up, and I thought, where can I find such use for my experience? I need to find something that I think is cool, where I still learn stuff every day, and I'm happy to go to work. So I was like, okay, where should I go after this? And I had a contact in a company called Big Science Sweden that started talking about a launch pad in the north. So I went back to Sweden to a company called SSC. This is in Kiruna, in the north of Sweden, so higher than the polar circle. And here they have a launch pad, they have balloon campaigns, and they also have a ground segment for satellite communication. And here I was hired as a project manager for the satellite communication part. It was a very, very cool experience. It was a very cool environment and a very global atmosphere. But I was missing a little bit the mechanical engineering side that I had experienced at CERN, and I was also missing Switzerland. So after 2 years at Kiruna as a project manager, I decided it was time to go back to Switzerland. And this is when I found Astrocast. Astrocast is a small startup in the Lausanne area. They are doing LEO satellites, and here on the pictures you're seeing 3U. So this is basically this size. I was hired to help with the design for the next generation of satellites, which is the double size. It's 6 units. And I could also help with the production of the 3-unit satellites. And I was very lucky to go with my colleagues. So we did the whole integration. We did the testing sequence for the satellites. And then we went to India to do the final integration of the satellites there and the final testing campaign. And we could actually go up into the fairing of the PSLV rockets and hand over the satellites up there, which was very, very cool. But after this experience at Astrocast, I wanted even bigger challenges. So I changed company again, actually, and this is coming up to my current position, my current role right now, which is at a company called Swiss 212, which is also in the Lausanne region. Swiss 212 are doing geostationary satellites, so much bigger than the LEO ones I was working with before. And on this image, you see a comparison between a standard geostationary satellite and our satellites, which are called humming sats. The humming sats are around 2 times 2 times 1 meter and are weighing 1 ton. So it's a big difference between the standard geostationary satellite and these small satellites. What I am here to do is I am doing the accommodation for the satellites. I make sure everything has space inside. There's space for the propulsion, there's space for the antennas, for the payloads, for the solar arrays, and that everything can be integrated afterwards. And here is a small image of our satellites. It's a huge team effort, and we're a startup, and we're building this from scratch and developing it from scratch. So we are actually in expanding phase in the company right now. So if you're interested, you should go into swiss212.ch and you should look at open positions, because maybe there is something that is interesting for you also right now. And I think that is it for me.
Awesome, Frida. This is great. Thank you so much. So I think we will
Thank
go
you.
for the next speaker, and we'll continue question and answers after all the speakers have introduced. So let's go to Mario. Mario is, software engineer by education. He's working now at the Airbus, and before he was at CERN, and he did his master's as a technical student. So Mario, the floor is yours.
Very good. Thank you, Gun. Very happy to be here today. I'm always glad when I have the opportunity to continue being in touch with people at CERN. So hello, everyone. My name is Mario Bolivar, and I actually work at CERN as a technical student before, quite some while ago. And nowadays I work at Airbus. There you have a QR code in case you want to get in touch with me. And I'll try to give you a brief overview of what I did while I was there, and also what was then the next steps for me. So, which was my experience at CERN? I was there as a technical student between 2005 and 2006, working in the IT department for AFS. So many of you might know about AFS, some others don't. AFS is a large distribution file system which enables the concurrent storage of mass data coming from the detectors, mainly Atlas, CMS, ALICE, and LHCb, plus some other sources of data. My mission there was to create a system to monitor the data intake and also to ensure the smooth operation of the system, which at the time, which is a very long time ago, was having 2 billion accesses a day. What you see in the picture actually is the robot, which is actually taking the tapes, which were hosting the data coming from the experiments. Beyond having a very good time at CERN there and actually meeting very nice people who are my friends today, CERN helped me in many different ways. First of all, I gained technical knowledge on very specific domains, and actually researching and creating something from scratch was a great challenge for me. But also, I had the opportunity to work for the first time in an international organization and understand the stakes of it. And that is something that I think really shaped and influenced my career afterwards, because international exposure has become something which is constant for me afterwards. Working at CERN also helped me understand how a large organization works. And it was my first contact with a organization which was also running some processes and a structured way of working. And that also helped me to understand better myself at work. What are the things that actually I like? What are the things that I dislike? And it provided me with the means to better understand what I wanted to do next. And I would like to conclude this part by saying that I think my stay at CERN was definitely a boost for my career. I really think it helped my CV to stand out in the pile when I was starting to look for a new position. And I think the CERN is a powerful brand, which is also helping to get also additional opportunities afterwards. So after that, a little bit of myself. I think what some people say, an Airbus baby. Actually, I moved into aviation just right after I finished working at CERN. And during my first 7 years, I worked in Airbus helicopters in very different locations. So France, Spain, Australia, the US, Brazil, but mostly on 2 different topics. The first one was around helicopter operation services, designing and developing online services for the operation of the helicopters. And that includes activities such as spare parts management, warranties, repairs, predictive maintenance, technical documentation, on board of the flight systems monitoring, like some of the parts of the mechanical assembly of the aircraft, but also some of the dynamic components, which are also affected by the use, and we were monitoring life during the usage of the aircraft. And a second part, which was mostly focused on helicopter production. And there I was working on performance processes for the assembly lines, with a very important focus on lean practices, operation sequencing, tooling and stock management, and workforce time allocation. And after those 7 years, I switched to the commercial aircraft activities and worked in the digital transformation for a while before I moved into the A320 family. The A320 family is the 320 and 321 aircraft, which I assume many of you have frequently flight on. I currently lead the program organization, which is in charge of securing proper project management for all the product evolution, which are modifications on the aircraft or industrial system improvements. Our current major stake is to actually meet the market demand. We have more than 7,000 aircraft in our backlog. We need to build them. We are currently building 60 a month, which might not seem like a lot, but actually that's 3 aircraft per working day. And I can tell you that that's a lot of work. And that is mostly the major challenge we have in front of us. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an overview also of what I do today. So that will be it for my part so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Mario. This is beautiful, amazing. It's the story to hear. Frida and Mario both is inspiring. So we go next to Sarah. So Sarah is a research scientist at the German Aerospace Center. And before that, she was working at CERN doing her PhD on Atlas and perhaps also the postdoc, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, so the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, maybe I can share my screen. Yeah, so hi, I'm Sarah. So to talk a little bit about my past at CERN. So as you kindly mentioned, yeah, I did both my PhD and subsequent postdoc working on the Atlas experiment. My work was basically focusing around data analysis and also doing some shift work with the muon trigger. I mean, with this, obviously, you learn a lot. You learn how to handle large data sets, how to perform complex analysis, and also then how to sort of deal with the scientific process in general. So all of the things that are associated with that, like paper writing or communication and presentation and this kind of thing. Also, somehow science communication. We also did a lot of tours for people of the Atlas experiment, which was very nice, and also not very nice to get close with the hardware and see it in person, but also nice to learn how to present that work also to a wider audience so that they also took something from that and understood. I mean, the time at CERN was also extremely valuable. You also learn a lot how to learn, and also, as people have mentioned already, learn how to work in this very nice international and collaborative environment. And I think that then has a lot of impact on how you can develop in your career in the future and how you're able to work in these international environments, which for me was extremely valuable. So after CERN, I made the decision to move away from Geneva, basically because my partner also got a job in Germany, and after already some years of living apart, we didn't want to do that again. So I decided, rather than to continue the contract of my postdoc, to then look for something else. And this is when I came across, at the time, I guess, what I also thought was a job in aerospace. And this is why I kind of include what kind of, because although I work for the German Aerospace Center, the program that's on offer, DLR, is quite varied. And so what we actually work for is now the Institute for the Protection of Maritime Infrastructures, which kind of does what it says on the tin. So I explain a little bit more about that in the subsequent slides. But basically, I joined there in 2018 as a research scientist, and then after a few years took over the group lead of the methods and processing group. And so, I kind of went in some way from particles again to particles. The German Aerospace Center is the research center for the Federal Republic of Germany. We have around 10,000 employees, 33 locations, and 55 institutes, and also many large-scale research facilities, so airplanes, power plants, this kind of thing. It's very large, very well funded, but it is still not a company. It's still a government-funded research institute. So in the end, the environment is not so different to what we already experienced at CERN. And how then we come to maritime security. So along with all of the typical kind of areas that you would expect from an aerospace institute, so aerospace and space, we also deal then with energy traffic and also to other topics of security and digitization. And this is where we come in. So we develop basically methods and technologies to increase the resilience, safety and security of maritime infrastructures. And for this, although we are a research institute, this is more applied than you would get in a kind of fundamental research institute like CERN. And instead, we work then quite closely with different stakeholders and different industrial partners to develop and test methods or technologies that can really be used in the real world. And so it's still very much more towards the academic side, but also very more practical and applied than I was used to in the past, which is quite a difference, at least for me. Also, the Institute is very new, so founded in only around 2017. So when I joined, it was only a year old, and this is something which has been very nice for me, which is basically, together with my colleagues, really shape the direction of research in the Institute and see basically together what we can do and how we can make a difference in the maritime domain. In our institute, we have, or in our department at least, we have a very wide range of topics. So we work on instrument development, multi-sensor network development, data analysis, and working with autonomous platforms and different cybersecurity. So you can see here from the images, we work quite practically. So whether that be with sonar systems, illuminated optical systems, and these kind of autonomous vehicles here, it's quite hands-on as well as scientific. This slide has gone a bit strange. Okay, anyway. So my group, the methods and processing group, here we deal then with the provision and processing of sensor data. And I think this is where it becomes clear that even though we move towards this industry, a lot of the skills that you develop as a scientist at CERN become still very valuable in this more applied environment. So we work with Monte Carlo simulations and simulation environment development, high-level data analysis. We also work a lot with AI-based analysis and anomaly detection, which is now very popular. at least from what I know of the large LHC experiment analysis, and also then sort of reconstruction of your data in high level format to present this to end users in a nice and understandable way. And the data then that we work with is then acoustic data, optical data, and also cosmic rays. So here, again, a lot of the experience from CERN is not lost. We use now cosmic rays as a probe for inside of large volumes, so particularly looking for muons and performing imaging with using cosmic ray muons. Yeah, so the major differences from CERN, I hope I'm still in time, at least from my experience here, that there's a significantly better work-life balance. There is not the expectation to work all hours of the day, which is something I think maybe everyone who's worked at CERN has experienced at some point or other. We have a lot more flexibility and creativity in the work that we can do. So this, especially with it being, at least for us, a smaller research institute, you have a lot more say over the direction of the research that you do, and a lot more input into how this goes, which for me is something that's very nice. I already touched to say that this is very applied, and this really features in the research, that practicality is a necessity. It's like, it's not so possible to do research like without any real application. But this then also is a very positive thing, at least in my opinion, because then you really see how the research that you do can impact everyday life, and then this is something very nice. Yeah, again, so a lot more autonomy, a lot more ability to collaborate with different people and in wider circles, which again brings a very nice social aspect to the work. At least for me now, a lot more direct responsibility. And yeah, I guess the more downside is that you have then a less international environment. CERN, this is super international. And as you go towards, maybe more national research institutes, you tend to have less of this, but nevertheless, it's still present. And also, I think helps you as a foreign national in a different country to be able to integrate the previous experiences with CERN. And for me, at least, a lot more bureaucracy, since, in the end, we're in Germany, and I think everybody maybe knows how that goes. But yeah, thanks.
Sarah, thank you so much. This was really great detailed information that you shared with us. Very useful for everyone. I think here, everyone takes something useful there. So we go last speaker, Patrick. Patrick is a lead software engineer at SpaceX. And before that, he was at CERN. He did his VIA fellowship. And between CERN and SpaceX, he also went to do masters in EPFL. And I want to add one personal note that Patrick was my teacher when I was first year at CERN. He taught me how to use LabVIEW and how to program LabVIEW. Thank you, Patrick. I am really thankful even today. So go ahead, the floor is yours.
I'm glad you still remember. Cool. So my name is Patrick. Hello, everyone. I am Polish. I finished Warsaw University of Technology, and also EPFL for masters. And in both universities, I studied kind of mix of EE and CS. And as Gunn said, I used to work at CERN, and now I'm at SpaceX. I'm talking to you from the other side of the world in Los Angeles. Quick note, opinions in this presentation are my own. I don't represent any current or past employers. So at CERN, I worked on the reliability of the LHC and all the other accelerators. I worked on test hardware and software for converter control boards, and I contributed a lot, did a lot of testing, a lot of software, and also learned a lot. I published 2 research papers, mentored multiple students, conducted the LabVIEW courses Gan was talking about. That was a lot of fun, and I really fell in love with CERN, its multinational culture, but also with its coffee breaks. I still miss the renversés of Swiss French and general the Swiss Romand way of life. I believe it's a perfect mix between, well, the Swiss German a bit more strict way of life, and maybe the French let's have a coffee sometime way of life. And I talk about it a lot while I'm here. But ultimately, after my VIA fellowship, I chose to learn more. I basically did not necessarily wanted to stay in test hardware and software, and wanted to go more into software and learn more. So I decided to go for master's. And well, when you work in a job as an engineer for 2 years, generally coming back well, from CERN is kind of already academia, but like to being a student is, I would say, hard. It was really struggling. I was really struggling to prepare for my master's application, and then there is a lot of like testing I had to do. And then during my master's at EPFL, which was not that far away, in Lausanne, I had a lot of struggles adjusting to, well, having a bit of a non-structured student life, not necessarily always having weekends, and having like, yeah, I don't know, just being back a student, felt like kind of a step back, but ultimately I think it was an investment in myself, and I think it was worth the risk. So after that, and why I think it was worth it, actually during my time at EPFL, I got an internship here in Los Angeles, and this is how I got here, at a Hyperloop company called Hyperloop One / Virgin Hyperloop. I think it doesn't exist anymore. And I believe I got this internship for multiple reasons. One, the grass is always greener, especially if your neighbor is from across the ocean. So if you think about what CERN means here in the US and what NASA means here in the US, and the opposite, what it means in Europe, the farther you are from CERN / from NASA, the more kind of wow it is, just because that's kind of how it is by the law of diffusion. There is just more CERN people in Geneva, and when I came here to Los Angeles, they were all very, very impressed with my CERN experience. Even though around me there were like a lot of NASA people that were like, "Yeah, I work at NASA, whatever," or worked. So you all should know that. I also had a lot of struggles with the culture. I remember my first time at the job, nobody really said bonjour or hello to me. It's a very strong individualistic culture here. It's not like people don't say hello, but it's a bit of a different vibe. And I'm still sometimes struggling with it. There's no reverse. There is no R3, which I used to love a lot. But there is way higher risk tolerance. The startup like this, like the Hyperloop startup I worked in, would probably, well, now there are some Hyperloop startups in Europe, but it's generally the risk tolerance I found here is quite higher. And during that startup experience, I got an opportunity to jump into SpaceX and work on optimizing their existing systems and developing their existing systems, which is, I think, again a step in a good direction from a startup. And at SpaceX, I cannot really talk a lot about my job, but I want to mention 3 things that I learned here at SpaceX. I think I really learned how to be a good owner and how to get shit done in a very, very end-to-end way. The best way to describe it is I'm trying to be the person that figures the assigned problem out, regardless of the team boundaries or anything that's like stopping me. I own this end-to-end, and I keep trying restlessly until this is figured out, and just inform my management chain if I'm blocked. And also I learned that the healthy level of paranoia is really important to success, especially in aerospace, I think. as long as it doesn't affect your mental health, and it's all I would call a healthy paranoia. Another two things I learned are related to pain and suffering and failures, which sounds very miserable. But again, as long as you treat it as a challenge, and it doesn't affect your mental health, I think pain, suffering, and failure can help us engineers build character and resilience, and this is what's needed to success. And in general, it's very important to fail because that allows us to learn the fastest. And as long as we improve and iterate and adjust to feedback, I think failure is great. Well, almost as great as success. So this is my like kind of full chart. And I want to leave you with some maybe summary and additional observations. Apart from like the tough situations and personal growth, I observed that every culture, every org, every company is different in terms of culture, but also many other things. The risk posture is different. The amount of pressure. I don't know, like I observed like how old people are affects like the general vibe and humor, right? And that's just pragmatic. Just younger people have a bit of a different vibe than older people, and I think that's okay. On the other hand, CERN, I think it has a unique mission, but it's like many other companies maintaining custom hardware and software. And creating it, and it has to follow some rules, and it owns a big machine that's not easily controllable or understandable by one human. And so all of this is what other industry like organizations struggle with. So I don't necessarily think that CERN, in terms of engineering, has like such different problems than the industry. That is all. Thank you.
Patrick, thank you so much. And I would like to thank all the panelists, all the speakers for taking their time, especially Patrick waking up. What time is it now there compared to this?
Oh yeah, it's 5. It started 5:30, so it was fun. 5:30 a.m.
Thank you so much for your dedication. Yeah. So I think now we move to questions and answer. But before that, I would just, I took some notes of each speakers. I just wanted to give my personal note, general theme. What I feel is that, for the people who will leave CERN in the future, this is the message I feel that, yes, you will do great after leaving CERN. There'll be struggle. There'll be, difficulty of, transition. And also CERN is preparing you with all the, useful technical and soft skills. And then making you, prepared, and also gives you, what you don't want to do and what you want to do, right? So that's my general, message taken from all the 4 speakers. So yeah, now we move to questions, answers. Thank you so much. So I think Rachel already commented. So the first question comes from the live Q&A. How easy was it to transit from an academic position to the industrial one? Even in the aviation, aerotech, space tech companies, it is seen that people prefer experts with industry experience. Was this an issue for you? Did you apply through open positions or through networking? Okay, there are multiple questions in one. So I let you panelists choose by raising your hand to answer.
So for me, I didn't see any problem moving away from CERN into the industry. Then, of course, I didn't have a PhD, and it wasn't really academia position I had at CERN. But also, I think I was it Patrick that said that CERN is a very good thing to have on your CV. So I was more feeling the good responses from a company, especially since I was applying to companies in Sweden. I think they have a very good image of CERN on the CV. So for me, I didn't see any negative points from going from an academic place into the industry.
think Mario wants to say.
Yeah, just to complement a little bit of what Frida said, and I share her view. I think CERN is a powerful brand, and it's a very good line to have on your CV. But if you're thinking about how to move into the industry, and maybe we will discuss about that in the next section, I think, more in detail, it will be important how you value what you have done at CERN outside. And for that, you need to anchor some major points without being too specific about it. And probably this is a subject we can develop a little bit on afterwards. But how to put in value, in context, what you do at CERN for the outside world is one of the key points that you will have to take care when transitioning from academia into another area.
So here's Simona posting the second question is, what skills, if any, were you lacking in when you moved to your job after CERN? What are your tips to fill that gap?
So I just jump in and answer. For me, I have the feeling I'm lacking skills starting every job. So it's not only going from CERN to my position after CERN, but there's always a challenge changing jobs, changing position, going from a position being maybe a bit more technical into a programmatic one. Also depends on the company. If you move from one mechanical engineering position to another, they're not going to be the same. It's different subjects, the companies look different. So my recommendation would be to the first 3 months, 6 months, your trial period, this is the time to ask questions, make sure you understand your position, and also raise the question if there's something that you are not comfortable with, or if you're feeling that you're lacking a skill or a tool, and to use the trial period also for yourself to gain the knowledge that you're missing, because you're in every job. I think there's going to be things that you feel that you need to learn more in.
Thank you, Frida. I think also that comes from your presentation where you said you knew nothing about RF before you joined CERN, and that brings you in. So there is a learning curve, of course, to get any skills up to speed if you are dedicated and if you have passion or interest to continue in that direction, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
So this is a perfect timing that such an event is coming, because I'm kind of in a similar situation as that of Sarah, I guess, because she did a PhD and after that had a postdoc position, and then because of the two-body problem moved to Germany, and it's a similar situation also for me. But I just have this is my second postdoc here, and every time I've been trying to apply for any positions, mostly like in the space tech companies in DLR and some in Berlin and Airbus. I've always found getting a reply back in the sense that I don't have any market or industry experience. And this is always a problem. Especially if I try to apply for small startup companies. This was the latest reply I got, was like, you have a profile which is like already getting towards senior position, but you don't have industry experience. So how are we going to take you? And we cannot, How did you deal with these kind of things? Was this a problem at all? Or,
Yeah, I mean, for me, at least for this, it wasn't a problem. I think in my case, it was quite a lucky situation because the institute was very new, and also this was more towards an academic position rather than an industry position. And therefore, this kind of industry experience wasn't already needed. I understand if you're applying within Germany at the minute, the job market is quite difficult, especially in this kind of aerospace sector. I think that I would encourage you to keep trying, and I guess we can we will highlight sort of some aspect of how to tailor the CV later. I'm not sure how you have the CV, but really tailor what you have more towards showing directly how the skills that you get at CERN relate directly to this kind of industrial sector. And rather than talking directly about the kind of analysis and work that you've done at CERN, but show how this is applied in a practical sense, or like what skills that directly apply to industry come from that, and highlight it more in this way, as opposed to tailoring it to show, okay, I've got this great academic background, now I want to come and work for you. Show already how what you already have applies directly to industry and what you already can provide from that.
Sarah, thank you so much. Yeah, I think what I understood from your response is that tailor your application so that you show what you know is matching where you're applying. So your CV, your motivation letter, and then, yeah, during interview and stuff. Yeah, thank you. Two more hands raised, Mario and Patrick. So Mario, go ahead.
So, Swathi, I would like to encourage you, because I think you can take a look at the industry, and in the industry, there are also many different positions which are not only business related, but they're technically related. So I will encourage you to look at companies which have a strong engineering drive, in which it would be easier for you to value your actual know-how. And I don't know what's your field of expertise, but I'm sure there are plenty of companies out there which can or will actually be looking for profiles with a similar skills that the ones you have. And I think that's maybe the most valuable item you can put in front of your application, which is have the right knowledge that can then be applied into the industry. And maybe a way for you to transition into a more business role will be to take first a more technical role in an engineering department within a company, to then move into a more business one afterwards. So that could be a two-step approach, which could also work out for you.
Nice, Mario. Thanks. Good point. Yeah. Patrick, you want to say something?
Yes, thanks. I just wanted to say that I was once or twice in that position when I was reviewing resumes. Well, I'm not a PhD myself, but I can share with you what is the anxiety why the hiring manager might not decide to hire a PhD. This is because when you look at the PhD or someone with a postdoc versus someone in the industry, you're just kind of afraid that they're going to come to your company, and instead of making money, they are going to write research papers. And research papers is not necessarily money. So you need to focus on kind of fulfilling that anxiety, that problem here, that like, okay, yeah, in my previous careers, I used to be focused on research and research papers, and now I am ready to make money with it by whatever X, Y, Z. I really think the industry ultimately is not about research. It's about, well, making money, because, well, it's not research. So I would focus on somehow highlighting that. For example, if you can tell, hey, this research paper I wrote was used here and made the other company or somewhere else, like someone used it, and well, it's sometimes hard to make an assumption how much money did you make, but you can say like, okay, this many other engineers used this library that I wrote. I think would be a very easy sell. That like, hey, actually, it's not only research papers.
Thanks, Patrick. So it's like directly relating your work to, production or like benefit for the industry.
Yeah, that would be great, I think.
Okay, there's one more question after. That is by Mohammed. The question is, dear panelist, what is your experience getting job through networking? Is easy or by some other means? So, yeah. Rachel has raised the hand.
Yeah, I have, because there's a statistic that I read recently which said that more than 70% of job offers are not actually ever even published. They're found through networking, which is why it's so great to have the. I'm going to plug the alumni network, but this is why it's so important to have the alumni network and these sorts of events, because it means you can come into contact with other people. And I think that I mean, the panelists are going to give their opinion as well, but definitely networking is a fantastic way to get a job, because so many jobs are not actually published. It's really through the network that people find those opportunities.
Very, very good information, Rachel. Thank you so much. So yeah, any comments on that from the panelists? Frida has a comment. Go ahead.
If I manage to unmute. Yes. So I agree. I think contacts are very, very important to find a job. It also gives you insight into the company. So maybe it makes you understand also if it's a position that is going to correspond to what you are looking for. What I also wanted to say is that in the beginning of the career, I always heard contacts were important, but it's very difficult, or was very difficult for me at least, because I didn't have the contacts. And I really see a big difference after having a couple of jobs, that now the network is starting to form, and it becomes very apparent after a while that it's very important to have contacts. So for me in the beginning, the contacts were more like when I was applying to a job. If I had been on a lecture, I could maybe mention this in a letter of motivation, that I saw this person giving this lecture, and like this, I sort of formed a connection with the hiring managers, and like stood out a bit from the crowd before having the proper connections of my own.
Thank you, Frida. Yeah, very, very good point. Yeah. So when negotiating starting salary, how did you use CERN salary as bargaining chip?
Yeah, maybe I guess this is something to raise, that not all salaries are negotiable. And I think that you also need to be kind of careful with this going into some positions, because for example, for us, this is a government funded research agency, and then also you're paid according to that. And I think at least in Germany, there's also, unless you go into private industry, this is often the case. And we sometimes experience this, that people come and apply for the position with the expectation to be able to negotiate the salary, and this is definitely not possible. So at least for us, this is something that is fixed, and you should also be conscious of when you apply for a job to make sure that you understand how the salary goes, if it's negotiable, and also look up the pay band to make sure that you're happy with that before you start the interview procedure.
Yeah, very good points. And I think along the same answer, I can also ask, one more thing along the same question is not just the salary, but also the benefits, the family allowance, kids' education allowance, and if you're international working from far away, home visit allowance and stuff like that. So do you guys have, options to choose or to ask, or this is part of the, standard job scheme? Or I would rephrase in a very short question. Compared to certain benefits, how do you compare your new benefits at your companies?
So my personal experience is, I think CERN has very good benefits. So for me, it was hard. Like I could not compare back to CERN, both on benefits and on salary. So I never used this as a bargaining. Also, I have the feeling that in going into the interviews, you sort of get the feeling of where the salary span is going to be, and usually, from what I've seen, I could negotiate a little bit, but I couldn't change the salary into CERN correspondence.
Thank you, Frida. Very good point. Yeah. So we'll go to the next question that is in the chat. Would the panelists say that master's degree is enough, or is a PhD a huge advantage?
So I can actually say from my perspective, not sure if this is just in the US or this is starting to be in Europe as well, but I worked with a lot of people, a lot of other engineers who don't even have like bachelor's degree. They just came out of high school and taught themselves how to program and are awesome developers. And they were at the same level as people with masters and PhDs. So especially in the industry here, generally doesn't matter as long as you have the skills. So there's no like, oh, you have to have a PhD. Although, yeah, there are some research positions where they are kind of like, they always say like, oh, PhD or equivalent. But or equivalent can be, I worked after my high school in RF for 10 years and I know more than a PhD. On the other hand, there's also a lot of people with masters, with PhDs. Ultimately, what matters is what you can achieve. At least that's how it is in the US.
Sarah, you want to unmute and start commenting?
Yeah, I think for this, at least in our experience in Germany, at least, this is quite important. I think to go towards like an industry, a higher level industry job towards a scientific research or a scientific industry job, then at least a master's is needed. And in oftentimes, at least here, a PhD is very highly respected on the application and is therefore also it's very well seen. I think the exception for this is more towards the engineering jobs, when oftentimes masters is enough, but still, I think at least a master's degree is needed.
Thank you, Sarah. So it depends on what you're aiming for. So Mario, you were cut off for a moment, so I let Sarah spoke. So you can go ahead and start again. Sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry, I got disconnected. I was saying, I think the PhD is the normal way of continuing a researcher life, but that is not an element which makes a huge difference on the industry unless you are going for a very specific research position within a company. And in that sense, I think a master's would be quite a standard for most of the business practice. And I agree with what Sarah just said and with what Patrick said before. There is something which is very different between academia and the industry, is that academia, you are focusing on a very specific field of expertise, and you are going very deep in that field. Whereas in the industry, you actually have probably the opportunity to be much more transversal. So you can change from one position to another. So deep knowledge on one area is not as important as your ability to also adapt and change. And that is one of the reasons why a PhD is not so much valued in the industry as such.
Great, Mario. Thank you so much. Yeah, that makes totally sense. So another question after. So question Rachel put in comments. How can you meet people from aerospace sector still being at CERN? Well, this is one place, of course. Yeah.
Maybe one option could be there are many air shows taking place in Europe. There are one of the two major air shows in the world are taking place in Europe. So Les Bourget in Paris and then Farnborough in the UK, one year each, and they often have public open those days in which all the companies are there and also getting to know most of the people. So it would be a very good opportunity for people at CERN to also have the opportunity to meet many different companies at the same time if you are interested in this sector, actually.
Thank you, Mario. Very, very good information. So people will go to the next air show. So that was the question answered also if you visit or you attended any specific event. A next question.
Sorry, can I just add something to that, Gun? Sorry. So also, without having to go to an air show, which is a fantastic suggestion, don't forget you can connect to alumni.cern and go to the community map. And then on the community map, you can use filters and you can search for alumni that have aviation or aerospace as either skills or industries in their profile. And then because people have signed up to the alumni program, you can contact them and generally they will get back in touch with you. So that's a very nice way to network. Also, this is a reminder to everybody to keep your profiles up to date and to indicate the areas, the industries and the sectors you're working in so that networking is more efficient. So that's also a good way to network as well.
Thank you, Rachel. Yes, very, very important. So yeah, I'll go to the next question. So you would say that PhD may be a disadvantage for the industry? So that's a question. I understood that it depends on specifically on engineering jobs, where a master's enough. but I let panelists answer as well.
Well, I'll try to answer where like it depends, and I would empathize with the hiring manager, and I would like imagine you're hiring a person to, I don't know, fix your faucet and in the kitchen, and like they are like the PhD in faucet design, but you just have a regular faucet. So if you're applying, you know, to like a regular job that do not require a PhD, it does not require a PhD, then like, yeah, if you apply for a PhD, the hiring manager is going to think like, oh my God, I'm going to have to pay them millions, and they are going to expect me to have this extreme like setup. They're going to be unhappy as well. But then if there is a company that actually requires a PhD and they have some really complicated things for PhDs to work on, then I think it's a benefit. But yeah, depending on the job, I would say, because it might just say that you're kind of overqualified.
Okay, thank you so much, Patrick. A very good explanation. So this is the last comment I will take from David before we go to breakout room on a break. Sorry, David, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. So first to thank the panelists and also CERN Alumni for this event. It's been very interesting. Second, just a brief comment regarding finding a job, just because I've been to this phase like now. And I know that in this event, probably there are people that are leaving CERN soon. I was working at CERN for 5 years with power converters, and now I was looking for a job, and it took me quite a while. I finally found one recently in the area, which, yes, especially if you're looking within Switzerland, do take time into account because it's not as easy as I thought it was. The question for the panelists is, well, I don't know if for you working in aerospace was your dream or not. For me, it still is. But if it is your dream or if it was, are you happy now? And if not, what are your dreams now? Like, what do you want to do after? Thank you.
Thank you, David, and congratulations for finding the job. This is a big feat. Yeah. So I'll let panelists answer. Go ahead, Frida.
For me, it was never my dream to work in with satellites. I just sort of ended up here. I don't know really how, but actually, I'm very, very happy with what I'm doing. I'm super excited to go to work. I have a lot of big challenges, exciting things to work on, and I have too much work, but at least I'm happy, and I don't see myself changing. I'm probably going to stay within this field at least for quite some time.
Very nice. I like it. Frida, thanks. Mario?
I was very much into aviation since I was a kid, and I really have a passion for that. And I'm very happy to come to work every day. I feel privileged that I have to walk through the shop floor and I see the planes being built, and I cannot avoid from having pride in what I do and in my team and what we do. So for me, it's a real source of energy on a daily basis, and I think it brings a very important part in your daily job to have that, and I think you can have that in many different areas. The important thing is that you have something which is important for you, and I know how much also researching and finding some answers is a source of pride and also energy for many physicists at CERN. So I guess the sweet spot is to try to find that thing which really makes your heart beating at work. So in that case, I can only encourage people to do it. And I think that aviation aerospace is a really extremely interesting environment to work on.
Thank you, Mario. Sarah?
Yeah, also for me, it was not my dream. I could never, I don't think I've imagined working in maritime security, but honestly, like in the end, this is really a very, very nice job, and also feel very happy there. And I think it's great. We have such a fantastic team, great group of colleagues. We all get on very well, have a really good time, but also do great work and have very interesting projects to do. And also, like as I mentioned when discussing, have a lot of freedom and flexibility to really pick things that are interesting to us to focus on. And this is something that is completely invaluable in work, and it makes you happy to go and do that.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I think so. We will thank all the panelists for the great answers. I mean, they've been very interesting, and I'm sure everybody got some useful information and answer to their questions. We'll take a break now, and we'll be back. We are behind the schedule, but yeah, we'll manage it. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you. I hope you had a little break and refresh. So yeah, we move to our next thing on agenda, which is acing your job application and interview. So yeah, Frida.
Yes. So I thought about this, and I noted down 4 points that I thought we could think a little bit about. One, we already actually discussed a little bit, and it's the importance of contacts. So what I usually did in the beginning, my last job, I didn't get through contacts, but I tried to mention somehow where I found out about this company. So if there was a motivation letter that had to be written, I usually noted, for example, I listened to this presentation, or I saw your company was mentioned in this magazine, or how you got the connection with the company like this. Somehow it makes it more personal for the HR when they're receiving your application, I think. I don't know if this works, but it's just something that I did that I thought was nice. So I think contacts is very important to get started and sort of get yourself a little bit off the pile of all the applicants that are received. And also so my second point would be to very clearly track the experience you have on the resume. So for each job that you're applying, take more time and not just send the same resume to every company, but to very clearly see, and it's you cannot be too clear, I think, to say you're searching for this, I can fulfill it by, and then respond. So it's very clearly like how your experience is tying back to what the company is actually looking for. So that would be my second point. And then coming into the interviews, something that I like to do is to search the company, see if there's any recent news that you can sort of glide into the discussion, maybe ask questions, and make sure to have a list of questions that you have as a fallback. So when you don't really know what to ask, you can always ask about the general company. Because I think sometimes it's very much focused on the actual position, which is important. But it's also important for you to understand which company you're going into. So it could be interesting to see, for example, that they landed a new deal. What is this deal about? How would that affect the company? Are they expanding? So to be prepared to also ask questions about the general philosophy about the company. It shows that you're interested, that you did some research, and that you also take this seriously when you're going into the interview. And I think for my last point, I searched a lot of jobs. When I quit CERN, I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I sent out very much applications to companies in Switzerland, to Sweden, I think even some in the US, and I got a lot of no's, and it was a bit difficult to get so many no's. And after actually seeing the process from the other side, seeing how companies are hiring, I realized that all of these no's are maybe not reflecting back on me. So it's important to not take the no's as a negative feedback on your if you're capable of doing the job or not. It could be something else. Maybe they had someone already in mind. Maybe the company actually doesn't have enough money to hire all of the persons that they have on the website. There could be so many different reasons for not getting a response from the company that maybe it has nothing to do with how your application is looking towards the actual position. So that would be my last suggestion, is to, if you're interested, send out as much resumes and CVs as you want, and don't be scared of getting the no's. The more CVs and the more interviews you're doing, the easier it's going to get, and the easier you will also understand what the company needs and wants, and if you're going to be a good fit for the company. So I think these were the 4 major ones I thought about before this meeting.
Thank you, Frida. Very, very interesting points, and you well-structured explained. And of course, as you said, I also had the same experience going through many applications, feeling bad at the first 10, and then after 100 applications, I just didn't care.
Yeah.
So thank you, Frida, again. We'll move to next panelist. We will go to Q&A at the end of all the panelists' turn. So Mario, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Gun. I was thinking about how to actually give you a little bit of advice from my experience, and I was thinking about the differences between academia and business life. So here are my 2 cents of what I think it's most important for you to move forward. First, focus on your soft skills. As researchers, you are asked to find solutions to very specific problems. Frida was saying before that she learned also many soft skills and she put them into practice at CERN, but that is not the main focus of your job on a daily life, and that will certainly take a much larger part in the business context. So be conscious of practicing your communication, collaboration skills, your conflict management, your emotional and collective intelligence. This will really become a major asset for you in the future. The second point would be explain simply your experience. What you do every day is complex. You know what a particle decay is, but people outside CERN do not necessarily understand that. And the details of your research is exactly the same thing. So when moving out of academia, you will be confronted with people who do not know what you know and which do not have the means to grab your current job. So take some time to think about how to explain your job in an easy and simple way to understand. I think that is a very important thing you need to manage. Third, value your technical knowledge. Find a way to make your current expertise a selling point of your profile. And this is also related to the question we had before on the PhD. So what is the selling element of your experience for the business you are applying for? So highlight the elements in your career which were major accomplishments for you, and think how to relate them to the business world. That could be how you collaborated or created a working group, how you actually organized or participated in or presented in a conference, whether you had international assignments. There are things in your life as a researcher that you can value in your profile. 4, mind the company culture. There are hundreds of thousands of companies out there. Find the ones which are operating based on a company culture which is aligned with your values. It is important to work on a place in which you feel comfortable and engaged. And last but not least, and this also came on the questions before, grow your network. I think currently your expertise is your best asset to move forward. And in the business world, you will have to complement that with some networking. So be open about searching for new positions, about connecting to people, about engaging with others. And this will not only be for your move into your next job, but this will become a permanent part of your professional life in the business afterwards, in which networking is something you will do regularly or daily, and it will become a normal part of your daily job. So those would be the five items I would highlight if you're moving out of academia.
Thank you so much, Mario. These are very, very important points. And I personally take notes as well. Let's move to Sarah. Sarah, the floor is yours.
Yeah, okay, so I can share the screen. So I formatted the tips and tricks a little bit different. I'm focused instead towards kind of the practical skills of CV writing to interviews and then to networking. So I think the CV writing is obviously of great importance. This is kind of often the first, unless you've had a networking experience with somebody before, this is the first impression that somebody has of you, and can go a long way to obviously determining whether or not you get selected for this initial interview. And so for me, as nowadays someone who has to look at a lot of CVs, these are at least the things which stand out to me or are, I think, important. One, keep it short. And I think this applies especially to the cover letter. You want no more than 1 page. If you have a lot of text to read, then it becomes quite tedious to really look through it and review all of these CVs very well. And I think it's always appreciated and stands out if someone can tell you a short, concise message about why they need the job or why they want the job and why they are relevant for that. And this is also something that's a transferable skill in your business life. You need to be able to sell your research or your work well and concisely. Yeah, and this is, I guess, the next point also comes under a similar topic, is only to list the relevant and helpful things. So here, this is particularly important moving out of academia, where, again, I think it's already been mentioned that often people talk a lot about publications and presentations and detailed jargon and technical points that are really only relevant for their former life. That we need to remove this, put only things that are very relevant for the job, that stand out, and that somebody can actually understand or make sense of, who it does not have the same technical background as you. And only link things then that provide value. We see a lot of people, for example, add in Git repos and stuff like that, that's maybe not so helpful for them, that if there's not a clear reason to have this, it should just be avoided. The readability and formatting is always important. It's important to have an attractive CV that stands out, that makes your document appear nicely compared with the rest. And also, it's always appreciated if you target really the CV and especially the cover letter specifically to the job, and you tell a story with that, why the skills that you have from your academic past really match your industry job or your going towards industry job, and focus on how those skills can be directly applied, you think, to the industry that you're applying to or the job that you're applying to directly. Something also that's, I guess, maybe a bit of a controversial topic is photos. And I know at least this was very weird for me when first applying for jobs. But in Germany, this is quite common and quite important. And I think also is very well seen. So if you're comfortable, at least if you're applying for a job in Germany, I would also recommend that you add a photo. Interviews. I think then we should always, first of all, contact the job owner first. Always ask for a quick call. You make then yourself known already to the person that you're interviewing. You can already meet them in a less formal environment before the interview begins, which maybe takes a bit of pressure off and allows everyone to act a bit more naturally. And I think that this is very valuable for you. Also then showing the passion, like why you want to move to this specific domain that you're applying to, and why is this important over other domains that you, I mean, maybe by this point you've already written 100 applications, but nevertheless, you still should show why this particular job is interesting to you or why this specific sub area is interesting to you. And this is very valuable to make sure that your interview does not become generic. And this feeds then to understanding the company and the role directly that you've applied to. The next is more practical, and like if in your interview you're asked to, for example, give a presentation or something like that, or present certain skills of yourself, then you should really make sure that you stick to these time limits and read the brief. We have sometimes the situation where we're asked to give a talk for a certain duration. This is not met, and then I think that this throws everything off a little bit and then can be maybe a little bit frustrating. So always it's important to try to understand what the interviewer wants and to to follow that as best you can, and also actively participate in the interview yourself. So, like, as always, you should also get to know, as people said, the company culture, and the best way to do this is to participate and have in your interview a real discussion, show your personality, and see how you can fit in with the general vibe of the team there, and make sure that from both of your perspective that it's going to be a match, because that's also important for you to make sure that you're happy in the job that you take, and to make sure that you have a fulfilling time there. Yeah, and then, yeah, be honest what you do and don't know. Make sure that you don't like over exaggerate certain skills or under exaggerate certain skills. Or I think sometimes you see people who rely too much, for example, on these Coursera courses and stuff like that, which is very nice to have. But instead, I think, coming from the backgrounds that we have, it's nice to show basically how valuable this already is, and show how this allows you to learn, and how the skills that you've gained already in your career allow you to learn and adapt already to the role, and you don't need to go into too much to over explain, or to try and show in too much detail how every point on a particular job application can be met. And then networking, I mean, yeah, I think this is quite clear already. You talk to people, you follow up with them, make sure you should be doing this already before applying for positions, and make sure that you keep in touch with the network that you already have, and maintain these connections that you already have. This can be from anything, people you meet at conferences, or your former working groups or universities, or anybody from job fairs or networking. Make sure that these contacts are maintained, and mailing lists are also something very nice, especially in some of the domains that we work in. There's specific mailing lists which are community-wide, which are a nice place where jobs are often listed. And then if you can engage with this also, then this also is a nice way to find positions that you might not ordinarily be able to find. And yeah, although don't rely on social media alone, it can also be a nice resource for networking. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much, Sarah. These were the most and concrete, practical, tips for all three, writing CV, and interview, and networking. Thank you so much. So we go next to Patrick. I hope Patrick is having his coffee, or he had one.
Oh, yeah, I did. I prepared 3 slides with mostly examples. And as my co-hosts told before, I think being short and concise is really important in the resume. But first, what do you actually write in the resume? Definitely don't lie, but also think big. Think about your team's successes, because you were part of that success. So you can say, I made LHC whatever % reliable by doing XYZ. And what I think is important to, ask yourself, if you weren't there and you didn't do the job, like what would happen? And that's what I ask myself. And then I come up with sentences like, I wrote 5,000 lines of C code for internal library A with a long name, using technology B with a long name that improved vector mathematics, which made data analytics process for LHC take 30% faster. And then after this, you're playing a game. You want to summarize context and your success in the smallest amount of space, pixels, letters, whatever. And you want to like optimize for that, while also you want to be true. So delete acronyms like LHC. Nobody outside of CERN, not a lot of people outside of CERN, not what LHC is, but your interviewer might not know what LHC is. So why put there, or actually spell it out? And my personal advice, which I think maybe some people maybe disagree, is don't necessarily follow the perfect English grammar if it's not needed. You don't have to say, I wrote 500 lines of C code. You can just say CLib, and like you can summarize technology B as tech B. And instead of 500 lines of code, you can say 5K lines. and then suddenly you arrive at something like made analysis 30% faster dash to make it shorter, avoid vector maps, authored vector maps, CLib, and then the details of it. So you go from the success to like the general what you did to the details, and that allows your interviewer to get the gist of what you did as quickly as possible. And why are we playing this game is because usually when, from my experience, interviewers, their hiring managers spend like maybe 5, maybe 25 max looking at the resume at the initial stages. So you want to maximize the amount of value you communicate for your resume. Another thing that, again, this is my personal experience, but that doesn't necessarily apply to everyone. But what I found is that the quote unquote pragmatic and boring tasks are often the ones that the industry struggles with, and where the real value is for them. And by the way, I didn't find them boring at all. So things like, oh, I fixed the Python environment setup. That was annoying for the whole team and took every person 5 days to set up. Or like productionized Jupyter Notebooks machine learning models into HTTP endpoints, and then maybe build a website out of this. Or automated some process and now it's 50% faster. Even though this is not the core piece maybe of your job, it is really where like the stuff around your job is also very, very important. And I would say every company that, well, I applied to, I was interested in, they had obviously the core value, which is like, I don't know, I build cars, I build rockets, I build whatever. But then there is and 90% of the job is actually the thing around. And the core value is, I would say 10% of the job in terms of like the expertise of, I don't know, machine learning or building rockets or building cars. So there is that. And the third slide is kind of about your psyche when how you're thinking about your job. I think it's very important to believe in yourself, but also to be reasonable and know the context of the job you're applying. For computer science jobs and big tech jobs, there's this website, Levels FYI, that shows you different like compensation levels and around different cities and all. So that's maybe one resource. And CERN for sure is very like outstanding experience. It's a very outstanding experience, but you should again empathize with the hiring manager and understand that the new hire is a risk from company perspective. It's also like a risk and reward balance, right? But you want to minimize that risk by understanding their position and saying clearly communicating what can you provide, how can you solve their problem, and how much less of a risk you are because you work with others better, because you work with others well, because you could do all those external things and you can like, you know, make the environment better because you're gonna also clean up the Jupyter notebooks or whatever. So there is that. And I also want to maybe tell a personal story that coming to the job, I actually really wanted to get a senior software engineer position, and then I did not actually get the senior title, and that was kind of a blessing because now I understand that if I came to a job with a senior title, I would be crushed, and I was just not ready. At this organization, it doesn't like maybe in another organization I would, but not in this organization. And I had just a few pieces here and there that I had to work on. Manager for the growth path, like, hey, after a year or two, can I become this? And I kind of did. So yeah, if you get quote unquote down leveled, maybe ask for a growth path. And I think the grit and humbleness usually pays off So I really think this is like, I consider it a success that I kind of joined the company and then grew, and then am actually a better software engineer than I was before, other than just like starting at this position that I wanted to. And the last but not least, I think the mentally healthy approach to job search is also very important. And it's not necessarily only about your mental health, which is extremely important, but also it helps you stay calm during interviews, during negotiations. Where if you think about it, the job search, how I thought about it is like, I could do many things. Some of them are more, some of them are less exciting. Some of them are paying more, some of them are paying less. But things are out of my control, so I'm going to try to find the best things I could and apply to, I don't know, 10, 20 things that I think could be interesting to me, maybe 100 things that could be interesting to me. And then again, I cannot control things, so I'm just gonna do my best. And it's important to remember that your job doesn't define you. And I really think this mental approach actually not only makes you feel better, but also gives better results, including negotiation. That is all.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Very, very practical and useful tips and information again. I combine all four of you, your presentation, and the message is basically, believe in yourself, make it brief, concise, keep readable and clear CV and letters, and also be interactive with the interview person and not just be a one-sided job. It's like a communication, as some of you say. Yeah. So I think I won't take more time, and let's move to the questions and answers. So I let the platform for the audience to ask questions. There is a question Rachel is writing. For the panelists who are on the hiring end, if you are on the hiring end, what do you think are the worst mistakes applicants make on their CV or in an interview?
I can go, maybe.
Go, Mario, go ahead, yeah.
So for me, CV-wise, and I receive several CVs a week. If it's too long, it's complex for me to go through them. So you need to actually, at the very beginning of your CV, you need to highlight the key elements of your profile, which is going to be the standing thing, which will be the people giving the way to also continue reading. I find many CVs which are only and purely technically driven. And for people, especially coming out of academia, it's also something normal, because what you're expected to do in the research area is to in a very detailed way explain everything you have done. On the business side, I think it is important also on a CV to talk a little bit about your soft skills or something a little bit more personal about yourself. When it comes to interviews, many people are obviously stressed through the exercise of an interview. So I encourage you to relax yourself. You're having a person in front of you and nothing bad is going to happen. They're going to be asking you questions, and just answer plainly and honestly about yourself. So the best thing that you can do in an interview is to be honest, and that is a big plus. So do not oversell yourself. I think it's important to be humble. Something I value in people is when they say, these are my strengths, and these are the things I need or I want to work on. It shows to me that people have the capability of being self-aware and also a willingness to learn. So that's another tip for you. And we said that before, and Patrick said it not so long ago, be careful with wording, be careful with how you explain things outside. The people in front of you will not necessarily know or understand your universe. So you need to make it as simple and understandable as you can. And maybe one last thing is be explicit. Do not let space for things to be interpreted, or for people to try to have their own mind or idea about what you're saying. So the more precise you could be in your way of speaking, and the more explicit you could be about topics, the better it would be for you to make sure that the person in front of you is really understanding what you want to place as a message. So those would be my advices.
Thank you, Mario. Very nice. Yes, super nice. Anyone else? Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think for the CV, I completely agree with Mario. Maybe to add, also with the interview, I completely agree with Mario, but also maybe to add one point with the interview for one thing which looks very bad is if you haven't properly prepared or understand the role or the company. So sometimes, as you can see from what I explained of our company, for example, or from not company, but from our institute, is that it's a maritime focused institute, and on a few occasions we have people interview who've come in and I love space, I really want to work in space, and I want to work with airplanes, and clearly haven't done the homework on what the job is about or what you actually do, and then immediately, even if this person completely fits the role or completely fits the position, it then becomes impossible to hire them, because they clearly don't have this interest or real passion about what you're doing. It's just a generic interview for them, another one of many, and then it's not so attractive. So do the homework.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. So there is homework to do and be tailored for the interview. Yeah. Another question is coming, still on the subject of CV and applications. With AI screening applications, how do you stand out?
No, honestly, I don't know. Right, from my perspective, everybody's silent. But what I do want to say is AI tools, as I think about them, they are supposed to, well, replace humans. So I would hope they are not that different than a human pre-reviewing resumes. And if you think about it, you want good precision and good recall. So I guess the same way you stand out, you stood out before AI existed. And I think a lot of companies have like established processes, and maybe some of them are using keywords. Yeah, I guess I don't know. Maybe I'm just not familiar how this automatic resume screening works. Anybody knows?
I did write, I had to invite my sister to visit Europe. It's not CV, but it's still a letter to write to Embassy of France in India. And my first letter, it was rejected in 2019. And then I invited her again in 2022. And that I wrote with ChatGPT. And the letter was beautiful. Got accepted, and she got the 1 year visa instead of 3 months. So that does make a difference.
Dan,
Rachel, go ahead. Yeah.
sorry, yeah, we'll try and find this in the chat, because when we organized Third Collisions, our reunion, we had a panel about job applications, moving out of academia. We had some CERN alumni that spoke on that panel, one of whom her company is actively using AI to screen CVs and applications. So we will dig out the link to that talk and we can post it here. Otherwise, people can find it on alumni.cern in the media center under collisions.
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, that's very helpful information. So what role does knowing the language play when moving to France, Germany, even if in an international company?
From my experience, it plays a big role. Even if it says it's not mandatory, to show that you have the willingness to learn already puts you in a better position, I think. Usually it says it's okay with the English because it's what is needed for doing the job. But I think you are a little bit better off if you show the willingness that you want to learn the language. You don't have to be fluent, but just to say that maybe you started a course or you know a little bit. And I think also it's easier for the coffee breaks. So where I am now, it's supposed to be only English. We have also a part in the US, but it's very often the complicated discussions, they sort of tend to switch over to French. So in the end, you are, I think, better off knowing the language of the region where you're in.
Very,
That's
very good.
my
Yeah.
experience.
Thank you, Frida. Yeah. I think I can say the similar thing. I became a staff at CERN, and I was told French is not necessary, but nice to have. And when I started working, I have two technicians, and they speak mostly French. And so I was stuck. So I had to improve my French. And my work improved after that. So we have more questions coming in the chat. Paul is asking, do you think is a good idea use ChatGPT for tailor CV and the job description? My answer would be yes, but panelist, what do you have opinion about ChatGPT?
Personally, I think you can use any tool you want. And of course, you have to reread everything afterwards and make sure that it's not saying anything that you're not standing behind. But for me, I think as long as you are comfortable with what it's transmitted, use whatever tool you need.
That's very well said, Frida. So there's no more comment.
Maybe just to say, make sure that you remove
Yes,
the prompt from when you copy and paste it from ChatGPT. Make sure you remove the prompt to make sure it's not super obvious.
Yeah. So the letter I wrote for my sister with ChatGPT, I had to remove, the boxes. If I didn't see that, if I didn't check, again, passport number, and then there is box, and there is nothing inside. So next question, does anyone have any tips on networking for introverts?
Could I maybe answer this? Again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but if you're not so keen on going to big events with lots of face-to-face networking, on alumni.cern, we have the community map. I think Simona shared the link, and as I mentioned, you can search for people either working in different companies or with different skills, working in different industries, and then you can just message them. There is direct messaging, and you can feel free to message people in that way to make a first connection. Maybe later on in the year, we'll have also the means to do some online matching as well between our alumni, but that's maybe something that will come in the future. But I would definitely recommend doing some virtual networking using the alumni.cern platform.
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, good point. So I'm going to take two more questions. I think we are running out of time. So two more questions, one from the Q&A live. So yeah, for Europeans working in the US in this field, how did you manage to overcome the issue in seeking job positions because of ITAR? Now, I don't know what is ITAR, but I think this is for Patrick.
Yeah, I knew this question would come. And there is no easy answer here. I was lucky to first get another non-aerospace, well, not ITAR job here in the US. And I was lucky to get a green card, and then I was able to go apply to SpaceX. This is the real answer. There are multiple paths. What I heard is that it is generally possible to convince the recruiter in an ITAR company, the companies that say like SpaceX, and make some kind of special exceptions with some kind of special processes. But then you have to, as I understand it, be basically nobody in the US can handle your job, which US is big, and generally it's hard to prove. But I have two heads of colleagues that went through that. For those who don't know, ITAR, I think it stands for something traffic control regulations, international traffic control regulations. and companies in the US that are doing like the fighter jets, that are doing different missiles technologies, cannot hire basically not non-US or non-US people. I understand, and so this is why it's generally hard for from outside the US to get to it. If you're interested, we can chat more later, or just text me on LinkedIn or something.
Thank you, Patrick. Yeah, thank you for explaining this in detail. Yeah, very nice. One last question we'll take from this chat here. There was a question by Rufa. Are there any particular qualifications that one can acquire alongside doing her PhD or postdoc to make shift to the aviation easier?
I think it really depends on what kind of role you want to take in aviation. But at least from my understanding, or from my perspective, something that you can really work on is the coding skills, and make sure that I think, well, at least coming from a physics background, like many people from physics, you can code roughly or you can script roughly, but like an in-depth understanding or knowledge of real like computer science level programming is often not there. And if you already know during your PhD or something that you want to go into this kind of sector afterwards, then to focus on making sure that you have strong foundations in coding practically, then this can be very helpful. And if you can demonstrate that, also it can stand out above other people with a similar background. Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah. So that does mean that you have to know what you exactly want to do, right? And then you prepare yourself for that. Because as you said in your presentation as well, there's multiple subjects like interdisciplinary. So you have many different things you can do, like coding, as well as instrumentation. And yeah, thank you. So with this, I will conclude Q&A. We are running out of time, so I will say thank you so much to all the panelists from my side. And it was great, pleasure and privilege to interact with you in person. And Patrick, I would love to see you again in future. If you come to Europe, let me know. And welcome to CERN, yeah. Thank you, Rachel, Simona, and Elena. So yeah, I hand to Rachel the platform. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And so don't forget, Gun, if and when Patrick does come, you'll have to buy him Renversé in R3.
I will
Oui,
buy him a lifetime Renversé.
We will all do that. And if any of the other alumni would like to come back, we will also happily buy you all a Renversé in the restaurant of your choice. So wow, that was really, time's gone so fast, I can't believe it. Thank you so much to all of our speakers for those really, really valuable insights and the input of your experience of having moved from CERN into aviation and aerospace. Thanks very much for being so candid and for sharing your journeys with us. Now, thanks to you also for joining us, and please don't forget to connect to alumni.cern and use all of the functionalities that are there for you.